questions? Very good.
All right, and moving on. Under Supervisors, page 4 and 5, we have the medical examiner. The county service people are dying to use, right? Sorry. I'm sorry, you guys probably never heard that before. That's the first time. Okay.
Yeah, we're not Nancy and Chuck. So. Basically, just to point out some issues that are affecting our county medical examiner work. We've had a number of homicides in the last year and some baby deaths, and we no longer are doing those homicides. We send them to Ankeny, which has increased the costs to the county for medical examiner work as well as transportation costs as well. And the other issue is we have difficulty finding help to assist in our medical examiner work in the lab part. And we have one individual, and she lives 50 miles from north of us, but she also works part-time at the state medical examiner on weekends. She's very gifted, but as I said, it's very difficult to find help, and which has also compounded the complexity of having to send cases to Ankeny to be done because we don't have anyone to help, and some of the people that used to help us are retired and not willing to work to do that anymore. But anyway, and the other issue is our group has gotten extremely busy. In addition, our primary job is to cover St. Luke's and then 6 rural hospitals, as well as the majority of doctors' offices, their biopsies, pap tests, and laboratory work, and we squeeze our medical examiner work in on the side, and frequently we'll do autopsies for scheduling purpose at 5 o'clock in the morning just to get everybody together when we can do it. But anyway, part of the problem is that we have difficulty also recruiting pathologists to join our group, and it's probably because of the large number of medical examiner work that we do. We do enjoy it, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. It would be a fair way to say it. So anyway, with those issues, I think there are some solutions that we can work on, but the biggest issue facing the future is the current location of the morgue, which is currently at the Shriners Hospital, which used to be the Children's Hospital on the campus of St. Luke's. They've been wanting to do something with that building, tear it down, and now the time is coming to fruition where they'd like to do something within the next year or two. And right now, the county, or basically it functions as a county morgue. We store a lot of bodies, including hospital decedents that are waiting to be picked up to take it to the funeral home. But we also have medical examiner cases that come in from around the county. Some cases have come from out of state because they want an autopsy performed. Some of them are not really necessarily medical examiner cases, but they are decedents that have well-known histories and not really necessarily classified as a medical examiner, but because they're living alone, it's often difficult to find family until we store them for several days until family can be located, or we can't locate the family. And we have an individual right now that we've had since January 2nd and having difficulty locating family, and then in order that we can at least go through the indigent burial process. Those are not infrequent activities in our practice. And sometimes the condition of the decedent is such that it's appropriate that it's stored off-site from the hospital due to the smell and the conditions of the decedent. So the hospital wishes to do something with the morgue, but they also say that they probably would build another morgue for the hospital's purposes, but not for the county or the regional purposes, for particularly storage of decedents and whatnot. Because they've been doing this for over 35 years. In my time here, we've moved the morgue 3 times for very little money, but they've always assumed that cost and the facility. And also the security of the hospital controls the release of the bodies, the chain of custody, they're locked. It takes three locks to get through to get to the decedent, so it's a very secure facility. And we've been lucky to have that sort of service provided essentially to our county for not very many dollars, or for free essentially. But I think the long-term solution is that I know Lynn Wold, the CEO, would like to sit down with a couple of representatives as well as others to of the county board to discuss the future of the morgue and what they'd be willing to contribute to, and also find out what the Woodbury County would be willing to contribute, because we are one of the major centers in northwest or western Iowa that still can do this activity. There are not many practices that do medical examiner work anymore. I think Mason City still does, but on a very limited basis now. So that's kind of the future that we're facing. It'd be nice if we could hire we have talked about hiring a forensic pathologist within our group. We've come very close to doing that, but the logistics of that can be rather problematic because they're not interested in practicing pathology, general pathology like we do, but want to do specifically only forensic pathology. So potentially, there's some regional facility, regional activities so that the revenue could come in and help support a facility of that nature. But anyway, that's down the road. But I think to begin with, we need to have a discussion with Union Point and the county and our representatives to with solutions of what we're going to need, and come up with a plan to find out what the cost might be and whether it's worth restoring some of those same abilities or not. So, any questions, please, or refinements?
So what kind of time frame does that look like?
Well, they said a year or two, but you know how things are. I don't, I think if we could set up a discussion within the next month or so, we can find out where everyone's feelings are about it, what could be done, kind of the pressures we have, some potential solutions of sending bodies to Ankeny for certain cases, that sort of thing. It's just that, like I said, we've had an inordinate number of homicides, plus we have been without certain coverages on weekends where we could do the autopsies, but we don't have the help to do it. And we're trying to train somebody, but it's one of those things, unless somebody buys completely into functioning as an assistant, it's difficult. It's not an easy job. It's not like TV. So, and they're not gelatin bowls, so that's what they use in TV. So.
Mr. Chair, do we have a specific liaison for the medical examiner? I know.
I don't remember. Is that something we? Well,
so I guess
I could meet with Lynn, and is it you two and Lynn and?
Right. I mean, you can have at least two members of
Sure.
the board meet with Lynn and their administrators without violating,
Sure.
the public meeting law.
Anyone else that would?
That would be the first solution, and then we could, whatever comes out of it, we can inform the rest of the board what was discussed there. You guys are
Anyone
respected,
else willing to volunteer their services?
I'd be willing to sit in.
Okay.
I sat in on that, on a couple of meetings that we've had in the past too, so unless somebody else wants it, I can be there.
Okay.
So based on your interfacing, either one of us would be free?
We'll contact you two, and we'll get a hold of Lynn and let her know what time's available, and is that reasonable?
Sure.
Okay. Just get some preliminary discussion going, because they are committed to the extent to providing the service, because they did replace one of the main pieces of equipment a year and a half, 2 years ago, that had been there for 30 years. So it's, they realize the contributions to the community, but as they say, things have changed, and they're not sure they should be saddled with that entire activity cost-wise. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I guess on our budget page, or are we?
Page 5.
Yeah.
There's somebody else. I want to hear from the funeral directors, because they want to talk about the
Yeah.
mileage taking the bodies down to Ankeny.
Okay.
Told you, nickel a mile.
Well, we'd kind of like to ask the board if they would consider a little bit of an increase for our mileage, transportation charges and transferring.
Could you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, my name's Dale Meyer from Meyer Brothers Funeral Home here in Sioux City. And we have been called approximately, I think, 14 times last year to do transfers from here in Sioux City to the State Medical Examiner's office in Des Moines. And we have been just charging a fee of $400 for that transfer, and we're asking you to consider maybe an increase to $500 to help with the staff and mileage for those transfers.
So it'd be essentially, like this year would have been 1,400 then, if it was a $100 increase, is that?
That's correct.
Okay, and that is just probably covering your actual cost, is that a fair
Yes, it is.
assumption?
And sometimes we go at night and I pay a staff member overtime, again, I'm not looking to make a lot of money on these things, I'm just looking to get our costs covered. And, it's $1.25 a mile, with the staff member and the car and gas and all those things, and so I think that's a fairly reasonable amount.
You take them down there and bring them back then?
No, usually it's up to the family of the deceased to pay for the transportation back, either to here to Sioux City if they're having services here, or to some other place where they might be from, where their funeral services would be held at.
If it's a law enforcement case, they pick that up, don't they?
Well, the county pays for us to transfer to the State Medical Examiner, and then it's up to the family to pay for transportation back to a funeral home.
Where is that found in this budget, Dennis?
That is found on page 5, and to view the first line item, ambulance assistance, we budget 16,000. That covers, at 500, cover 32 trips. Now, some months they may have 2 trips, some months they may have 9 trips. Very hard to predict how many, but I give them 32 or almost 2.5 a month, and that may not be enough. But there's other line items we could draw from potentially.
So is there any need to actually increase the budget, or could we just, similar or akin to what we did earlier, just authorize that every trip would be reimbursable at a $500?
Starting July 1st.
Starting
And
July.
they do call some of the other funeral homes here in town also. I mean, sometimes we're not available to do that transfer, or so they do try to rotate just a little bit. So there's probably more than just the 14 transfers that we have done.
I'd move to increase the reimbursement cost to $500 per trip,
Second.
Effective July 1st.
effective July 1st.
What, like in mental health, or when our sheriff's office has to transfer, or what, I mean, do we have comparable numbers before?
Well, they'd be transporting to the hospitals, things like that, not to Des
Right.
Moines, or not to Des Moines.
Well,
These cover deaths.
Right.
The sheriff would cover prisoners. So
Right.
it's different.
yeah,
That'd be under their budget.
Just as a little bit of a comparison, we do some transfers for the Iowa Donor Network. Sometimes people pass away here and we take them to the Iowa Donor Network, and they pay $625. So it's,
sure.
you're a little lower than what they're doing, which we're fine with.
And right to date, they're at $878, so 16,000 is right on par. If it's a little shorter, we come down with a $100 increase. We always have other lines could cover it. We always adjust throughout the year too, shifting.
Who was the second? 2 of us.
There's,
Potabom got second.
The motion before you right now is whether to increase it to 500.
Correct.
I guess any other discussion on that? I don't know. I think it's kind of a steep percentage increase, but I get asking. And that's just my personal thought. There's no other discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to vote no on this one. So anyone else wants to vote no? I'll pass 4-1.
I'd move to receive the medical examiner budget.
Second.
Okay, motion by Taylor, second by Ung to move the medical examiner budget to receive it. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, now, Comm Center. You are up, page 27 of city, or of,
Glenn Sedovey, Communications Director.
The numbers in your budget book, 683, does include improvement requests. In conversing with Donna Forker, the finance director over there, they took them out, but the council is going to review it February 2nd. So I'd recommend we take the 17,000, take 17,267 off. She feels that the board over there, or council over there, wants a flat tax. So to do a flat tax, they're gonna have to delete a lot of things. This would be one of them, but they haven't made that official decision yet. But I'd feel pretty safe in taking it off.
By flat tax, Dennis, do you mean?
Tax rate.
Keep the tax rate the same? Okay.
Yep.
Do you concur with that,
So,
Glenn?
correct. The improvement request that we put in for an additional operator, full-time operator to help reduce a lot of our overtime costs and shift coverages and things. Currently, it's been taken off the table as far as finance, but we had a meeting today, and finance and city manager is going to have us present it in front of council and have the council make those determinations. So February 2nd or 3rd is when we have our budget hearing with the city council.
I'd concur with taking it off. I think it needs to be said that if it's brought up, well, the county already has taken it off the table, that somebody says, well, they took it off the table because you took it off the table. In other words, they're not following our lead.
I would like it to stay in the county's budget and move it forward to the city. It was approved by the commission to move the improvement request forward due to the staffing issues we've had, the stress levels and such that we incur throughout trying to force overtime. Wendy's continuously forcing overtime on a weekly basis, which we never had that issue before, but it's the staffing level that we have. We went through several staff members over the last several months. We are full staff now, but still in training. And we know that we can reduce a lot of our overtime just by putting another full-time person in place. But those numbers haven't been pulled out of this budget either. So to know what the actual number will be with the improvement request less.
You're saying how much reduced overtime would be there so that this position would essentially potentially pay for itself or a portion of?
Correct.
I hate to say this, but I'm just gonna turn my mic on. Every position that I've been told, either over there or over here, that we were gonna reduce overtime, it just hasn't happened. I mean, it doesn't matter if it was the sheriff's office, the concert, every time I've been told if we have this position, we'll reduce overtime. I mean, the reduction is maybe like 3%, not the 80% or so that I was led to believe. So I'm not calling you a liar or anything. I'm just saying that the expectation of what reality actually happens is never always what we see. So, yes.
Just three comments here. One, if you leave it in there, is that sending a message back to the council that you're for the improvement, when maybe you may not be? You could bring this up a wrap-up, leave it in there, bring it up a wrap-up, but you want to send, what kind of message you want to send back to the council? Because we have the same problem with a WIC upstairs.
Yeah.
Same thing exactly. They want a lot of improvements up there, and right now, I've been told by finance, none of them are going to happen. No improvements. So then would we put it in our budget too then send a message saying, well, we're in favor of them, but yet you don't want to do more? You're caught with a commission like this where you both sit on the boards. The board may agree to add them, but then you got two council board that won't do it.
Yeah, and I'm fine with taking it out right now as opposed to leaving it in there. The last couple times, I think we should have just taken it out of WIC too.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Glenn, what do you have for turnover rate? Do you have some burnout effect? I mean, would this position help alleviate if you have that?
I would say right now, we don't, but we're going to. I mean, the job has just changed so much in the 20 years that I've been there. We no longer have people that want to work 50, 60 hours a week. You know, you guys see the news. There's not a day goes by that we don't have a call involving weapons, a pursuit. Those kind of things, you know, didn't happen daily 20 years ago. People want to come work their 40 hours and go home. We also have extremely tenured employees. Probably over half of our staff has been there 20 plus years. They earn time off and they deserve to take time off. And because of, and right now we're not short-staffed, but people earn a lot of time off. You know, when they work a holiday, they earn another day off. So right now it's not bad, but we also know it's highly likely within the next year we may have 2 people leave. We have 1 person that's eligible for retirement, and then we have another individual who's starting his own business. Well, when someone leaves, there is at least a 6-month window that takes us to train a new employee. So that is 6 months that the rest of our staff has to work extra to fill in those hours. We also were asked last week by fire chief, police chief, the sheriff, the county attorney to do some comparisons with other agencies, and Glenn just handed you that. You know, we did just some quick comparisons with agencies that are somewhat comparable in our size. The numbers are kind of all over the place, but it's obviously clear that based upon call volume, our staff is working about twice as hard as some of these other agencies. And we are very low in management. We don't have, I mean, it's Glenn and I, and everybody else is, you know, line workers that are doing the job. You know, we're not a department with a bunch of fluff. I mean, there's not, I mean, you can tell by our budget, I don't know, Glenn could tell you the percentage. It's personnel costs, and that's all it is, basically, a good percentage. But we haven't added employees in years. We actually lost an employee, I don't remember what year it was, but we used to have somebody that was a training operator, and they coordinated the training for all current and new employees. We lost that in a budget cut. It's probably been more than 10 years ago. And we've just continued to get by with less. Our people are expected to do more all the time. You know, I don't know if you guys remember about 15 years ago when we took over dispatching for Siouxland paramedics. We did that with no additional staff. As Siouxland paramedics went away and Sioux City Fire assumed that responsibility, our dispatchers still do all that work. So we're asking this board to support us, and you know, we know it's tax dollars, but we need to take care of our people. You know, there needs to be a balance of work and home, and our people don't want to work the extra hours. We need people to fill the seats. And it's an officer safety issue. You know, there's times that if somebody wants off on the night shift, we make that decision that, okay, it's not generally as busy overnights, and we let them work with 1 person short, but crazy things happen overnights. You know, we've got shootings and stabbings, and you know, like you heard the medical examiner say, we've had more homicides this year. You know, the dispatchers deal with all of that, so we need to give them the support and give them the staff they need to do their jobs.
And it's not a week that goes by that Wendy's not leaving her duties and going out and sitting in a position and running the radio for a day because we can't get people to come to work, or we have to force overtime and have people carry over and work more than their 8 hours, more than their 10 hours. You start putting people out in that position for 12, 13 hours, it's too long.
And it's a position that often gets overlooked in the public safety position.
Absolutely.
And having been on the other side, knowing how vital that connection is, I'm amazed what they do now.
And what was the total cost of the position?
I think the total cost
Total
is
cost is 80 some
some
thousand,
thousand.
but that was without any reduction in overtime costs.
And we have seen reduction in overtime costs. We added a floater. It's probably been close to 20 years ago. We kind of did the exact same thing as hired an additional full-time person to try and eliminate some of the overtime. And honestly, part-time are hard to find and hard to keep, because in our job, part-time gets no benefits. They don't get any holiday pay. They don't get any shift differential. So it's very hard to get that part-time person that, one, doesn't need a full-time income, that is willing to just work for us part-time. And like on a holiday, you're working part-time sitting next to somebody that's full-time that's making double time and a half what you're making. So we do have some dedicated part-time people. They almost all but one have other jobs because they need a full-time income just for themselves. So, I mean,
And it's expensive to train these part-time people. You get them training and then they walk out. You know, there's been.
I guess I'm not in favor of cutting that. To Mr. Raddick's point, I know the value of employee stress and employee burnout, either for hours worked or for stresses endured on the job, so I'm not in favor of.
And the plan is to make this person a floater, like, you know, move them throughout the shifts as needed to help offset the time needed out.
I would just like to see this considered more towards the end of the budget, since we have
So bring it back for wrap-up.
that would be my preference. We have a big gap to fill, so.
So what's the practical effect then? Are we, if we defer this and are we taking it out and then considering it, or are we keeping it in? And then as a follow-on to that, I want to make sure, because we've tried to be consistent about putting off the improvement requests, but then I guess we didn't do that for the one. We left it in, and so how do we want to tackle that, I guess?
Well, I would prefer to leave it in and then hit it on the wrap-up. It may be solved across the alley, too.
When do they take that up?
1st of February.
Okay.
But I would prefer to leave it in and then readdress it.
Well, then I guess we'll just move to receive it as is and go from there.
Keep it on the list.
I'll be on the re-wrap list. Or wrap-up, I mean, wrap up.
Rewrap.
Yeah, re-wrap the budget.
What was the 17,000?
Yeah, that's for the improvement request, our share.
That's our share.
So for now, we're leaving it in there, bring it back up at the wrap-up. We'll have a better answer February 2nd, because the council may help make these submissions.
So I'd move to receive unless somebody else did. You did? Somebody second you?
Nope.
I'll second you. And then we'll vote on that. And one question after that.
Raddick Taylor. You had one more question?
After.
Okay. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And Jeremy's question.
So this is a question about WCICC. Across the aisle, they already voted to take all of those out. Is that correct?
The finance director has taken it all out, I think along with the city manager, but it's up to the council whether they want to put any back in.
Do you know when they take that up?
Not for sure. I can find out.
If you can, because then I'd like that to be reflected in the running total if we're going to.
it's probably the same day as ours,
Okay.
February 2nd.
I think they do.
Operating budget's all February.
Yeah, they do
like
all their operating in one day,
Okay.
8 hours straight, or whatever it takes.
It's a Saturday, and they
That'd be the
Where's
same.
Spread ours out, because I think 8 hours straight is pretty tough for anybody to do, and still be all right at the end of the 8 hours.
Is there a revenue page for 911 surcharges on here?
No, because that would go in the commission's budget. All we show is an allocation, that's all we do is an allocation.
So what percentage of your budget is from 911 surcharge?
no.
It's
That's
state law, it does not allow any of our 911 funds to be used for operational costs.
Really? Okay.
But we pay a lot of bills from we pay for the operations of the 911 center with 911 money. And like, we're gonna get new furniture, we're using 911 money, so, but we
That's
can't use
strange.
it for any personnel costs.
Okay. And that's just different in other states then, apparently?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have their own commission for 911, and they have a separate fund, it's a trust agency.
So it can't be used for any operations?
Like, we pay like all the 911 fees, all the phone companies, so we pay as much as state law allows us with 911, but then everything else basically goes to our operating budget here.
Okay.
911 pays, $600 and some thousand in operating expenses towards 911 functions, like they pay for all of our emergency medical dispatch program, pay for all the tower site that's not part of STARCOM, all the 911 phone lines, all the capital projects, like they just funding the new Danbury tower site at $850,000 to add to the STARCOM system. They paid for all the county fire departments to have radios installed. That was over a $300,000 project. So they pump a lot of money into this in public safety, but it just can't go towards salaries and wages.
Thank you.
Yep.
Look who's back.
In the STARCOM, what we have in the budget, we're gonna have to add $4,162. Okay, to the point when I set it up, I only allowed for 3%, but they did approve evidently that contract here with that process.
STARCOM Executive Board met last Wednesday and approved the operating budget for fiscal year 2020. That budget is split between Dakota County, Union County, Norris City, Woodbury County, Sioux City, and Sergeant Bluff. Total expenditures for the operating budget is $397,823. We bring in $104,935 in revenue for tower rent, Iowa Communications Network leasing to Siouxland Communications, King Street Wireless, Senate Incorporated, and Med Transit, Mercy Air Care. That revenue is divided or taken off the top of the expenditures. So we end up having expenditures of $292,887.92, and the county's portion is 23% under a 2080 agreement with all the agencies. So the county's portion is $67,364.22.
Which is a $4,162 increase, which
That's STARCOM you're saying, or?
STARCOM, our allocation is STARCOM.
Okay.
We're one of several entities like he explained there.
Looks like almost $1,900 increase. Are you not on page 29 or a different page?
29. We had 63,202.
Right.
That's go to 67,364, which is the
Oh,
4,000.
asking for another 4,000 on top of that.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
add on to that.
The reason for the increase is we purchased some, call it jumbo switch. It's electronic equipment that does the networking out to the tower sites. That equipment goes out of warranty into this budget year. So to keep a warranty for that maintenance contract, that was the reason for the increase.
I'd move to receive.
Second.
Not that it,
67,364.
what he said.
Increase of 4,000, was it 162?
67,364.22.
Yep, which is an increase of $4,162.
Is there a reason that didn't get put in this earlier, or just?
Right, because they hadn't had their commission meet, but we had to put a budget book together, so I had 3% on it.
We had this on the first agenda, and we deferred it to today because the STARCOM meeting was being held last week.
That's some of the problem we have with the budget, the way we start.
Sure, sure.
You have to estimate something to get it in there, so we got some ballpark figure in there.
All right, so motion by Taylor, second by Potabom. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Kind of holding in the sneeze for Kenny here, but we got building services, courthouse, page 3 to 6. talking time.
Kenny Schmitz, Building Services Director. We've got some handouts here. If you'd like to try to follow through with me. The Excel spreadsheet I handed out basically reflects the same AS400 figures that you've got in your backup materials. The text just looks a little different. Our 2019 budget was approximately $1,085,576. Our 2020 request was $978,378. On the Excel spreadsheet that I handed out to you with the different buildings on it, I did suggested calculations on deductions. I did this in an effort to hopefully speed up this process today. From the 2019 budget to the 2020 suggested budget or suggested deductions that I'm looking at is a 17% reduction overall from 2019's budget. The suggestions that I have laid out are also a 7.5% reduction from the request that you received in your backup materials. So I'd like to go through those building by building. We certainly can go through those line item by line item if you like. However, if you take a look at the suggested deduct on the far right-hand column, and the negatives that are in purple are the deductions that I suggest that we take. Knowing if we do take those deductions, some of those are fairly severe. So if there are major building repairs that have to take place, or if there are multiple building repairs that are necessary, we'll have to come back to the board and probably amend the budget at some point if that takes place. However, there are some numbers in there for repairs. This follows a similar pattern kind of that we took in the last budget year process in deductions. There is a typo on the very first sheet that you have for the courthouse building. In the suggested deduct, you'll see a deduction of $22,703. That actually should be a deduction of $26,853. And that change includes a $4,000 deduction that should be seen under the suggested deductions on 6105 for buildings. And with that, I'll go down, if you agree, I'll go down to the line items for each deduction, and when I get to the bottom of the page, we can go back and talk about any other areas that you'd like. 4130 employee mileage. I've got a deduct from 271 to 151, so that'd be a $120 deduct. On line item 4410, buildings. The original request was $26,404. I'm suggesting a deduct of $5,000. Line item 4420, equipment maintenance. Originally, the request was $6,115. I'm suggesting a deduct of $2,000. Line item 4450, plumbing. Original request was $23,083. Suggested deduct is $3,083. Line item 4455, HVAC systems. Original request was $49,878. The suggested deduct is $10,000. Line item 6105, buildings. Original request was $5,439. The suggested deduct is $4,000.
That's the one that we were missing.
That's the one that was a change, yes.
Okay.
And at the very bottom, the last item, security equipment. Original request was $2,500. The deduct is $2,500. For a total deduct of $26,853. And I'd take any questions anyone has.
Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. This is excellent. I think this is a great thing to do, and identifying for us reductions that we can make off the original position with maybe a second look. Could we look at two of them, 2320, please? And if we can find that, where that is in our books.
Which one was it, Jeremy? 2320?
2320.
Custodial supplies.
Custodial supplies.
Yes,
Can you talk to us a little bit about how you came up with
I can.
that figure?
The handout I gave you is the easiest way to explain it. There's a 3-page handout that shows the AS400 system. Those are the courthouse, the LEC, and the Trosper Hoyt buildings custodial supplies, actual numbers for 2018. That is why I suggest no change in my 2020 request. Those are actual numbers. They reflect actual costs, which I don't anticipate are going to be reduced.
Okay. And then how about 4410? You know, you have high of actuals 2014 to 18 plus 5%. You know, I'm just looking, and maybe you're shifting some line items. We were 9,329 year to date right now, and we had 52,000. So it looks like you're reducing it by 50%. But yet we're not even 50%. You know, can you just give me
Yes.
some background?
There again, buildings is one of the areas that we've picked on before in the budget process. Again, a lot of the money that would show up in that area is something on a larger repair probably. And if you're looking for a place to cut the budget, that's probably the place that's got to get the biggest numbers. And that is the place that's going to have the largest repair costs associated with it.
So is it fair to say that's kind of you don't know what you don't know, because how can you have a contingency fund for anticipated repairs when you don't know what those are going to be? Is that
That is very fair, and it's actually dead on. And for that information, I'll be back to the board in the next week or two with a large repair here in the courthouse that we haven't anticipated. We have a HVAC coil in an HU unit that has to be replaced. We're looking in the area of $16,000. That's exactly one of those costs that would fall into a category like this. And so I say, while we can reduce the budget or guess at what the budget might be, it's always pretty difficult to anticipate that.
so? If we go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just had one question if I could. On 4201, professional services. (2017) actuals, nothing, and then 3758 for 18, and then 8332 now.
Some kind of maintenance contract?
Yes. So you'll see throughout our budget, so we've shifted some things from one building to the other where they actually belong. In past budgets, some items were getting attached to buildings they didn't belong in, and some items were getting attached in different accounts that they didn't belong in. What I can say is the 2020 budget is very, very accurate.
So 2017, nothing, it was probably just budgeted somewhere else.
Yes, that would be my guess.
And I remember my first time going through this, we had a lot of things bundled in just one budget, and then it was spread out to buildings, and we said, let's make it so we know what buildings are costing what.
Right, and a good example, and why we're on that subject, I would like to also clarify, when we talked about custodial supplies earlier, that's a perfect example of this. We were previously, up until even last year, we're taking all the supply costs at the LEC. So you can see that I've included percentages in those numbers that I have. As we get to each different page, you'll see that. But we are accurately defining where those supplies are being utilized by building now. At our best, as best that we can, but at least it's getting divided. It's not all dumping into one building, which we know is highly inaccurate.
So if we are good with this, we would be moving to receive less 26,803, is that the number?
853.
853? And that would be new reductions, correct, Dennis?
New reductions, yes.
I'd move to receive minus that amount.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Young. All those in favor of the courthouse receiving?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to the LEC.
For the LEC, the 2020 request total was 333,868, 338,668. The suggested reductions that I have are $19,000, which would bring a total of $319,668. Again, on the very first item, you'll see where we changed the custodial supplies to reflect the proper percentage utilized in that area. So we did not show a deduction on that line item. 2325 light bulbs. Request was 260. We're suggesting a reduction of 260. $4,410 buildings. Request was $16,088. The suggested deduction is $5,300. $4,420 equipment maintenance. The 2020 request was $6,000. The suggested deduct is $2,000. $4,450 plumbing. The 2020 request was $11,048. The suggested deduct is $1,440.
Kenny, if you've spent $16,533 so far this year and you're over the budget, right?
Yes.
You're comfortable with that this year was extraordinary? Because
My answer is the board comfortable with it?
I want to give you the budget that you think you're actually going to need, and I have to come back with a budget amendment. If right now you're at 16,000 and you've got 5 months left of this fiscal year, reducing down, while that feels great, doesn't feel great if you have to come back for a budget amendment and say, I don't have enough money now. I mean,
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I understand also that the board has the challenge of trying to maintain their budget number.
Is this year extraordinary as far as the plumbing? I mean, is there something that happened where you're like, hey, I had to spend an extra 6,000 that we're not going to have to spend next year? Or is it?
It's difficult. That's another one. It's just difficult to guess.
Which line are you looking at?
I'm looking at 4450. Kenny spent 16,533 so far this year. And we're not even, I mean, we're halfway through the year, probably when this was put out. And yet we're going down to 11,000, where if it keeps on pace, it'll be more like 32,000. I'm not saying to just double it and be done, but I don't know.
17 and 18 were 10,000 and 8,100.
Right?
So what happened this year?
Yeah.
He had one big expense for $8,845, the LDC water heater. That's what's ballooning this one up.
Right.
$8,845.
That should be good for a few years now.
It could. We have 2 water heaters.
Oh, okay. Were they bought at the same time originally?
No, they shouldn't, but
Do you have any reconsideration on that, or do you think that money is going to be fine for this next?
I guess my reconsideration would be the original request of $11,048.
Okay. So we take the 1440 off of that reduction at the bottom. Are you following me?
Yes.
You don't just have that 1440 back in.
I think Ryan, if you're following along, he can give us the total when we're done. I think we were down to 4455 HVAC systems. Original request was 42,000. The deduct is 8,000. And the last reduction would be in 6105. There was 2,000 in the original request. The deduct is 2,000.
Kenny, what's 4478? The innovational concepts.
Innovational Concepts does our heating and cooling system testing, and we buy chemicals through them.
That's going to cost $2160 next year.
I would say yes.
Okay.
For the LEC, yes.
I'd move to receive less 17,560.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Young. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to number 3, Trosper Hoyt, page 11 to 14 in the book.
Trosper Hoyt, again on the custodial supplies. You'll see the shift and the change there. Again, we don't recommend any changes from the request. Suggested deductions begins with line item 4410, buildings. Original request was 11,639. Suggested deduct is $1,139. Next item, 4420, equipment maintenance. Original request was $6,000. Suggested deduct is $3,000. Item 4450, plumbing. Original request was $8,234. Suggested deduct is $3,384 for a total deduct of $7,523.
I'll move to receive it.
Second.
Is that minus the 7523 or?
Yeah.
Yeah, as it's presented. Move to, as it's presented with the minus 7523.
So the motion by Potabom, second by DeWitt. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Moving on to Anthony Courthouse, page 15 in the book.
I'd move to receive less the $6,000.
Why not even, you're taking away 75%, okay.
Yeah, next building is Hampton Courthouse. Suggested, there's only one suggested deduct. Original request was $8,000. Suggested deduct is $6,000. Again, this building is, it's a small building. It's tough to, know what'll come up or won't come up. In the past with this building, if we've had a problem, I've just come to the board and said, hey, look, we need to fix the roof. And
It's got a new heating and cooling system in it now.
yes, or new heating and cooling.
My only question was going to be, where'd we come up with the 8,000 to start with?
I don't know that I calculated that off of anything with this building.
Okay.
I think Kenny was under the assumption that he got 2% of all of the savings from the initial position. So, 6,000.
So a motion by Taylor, I'll second it, second by Radig, to receive the Anthony Courthouse Building Services budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Yeah. Moving on to the Prairie Hills facility, which is page 16 through 17 in the book.
The Prairie Hills facility, training facility, being fairly new, it's difficult to go by anything that show up in actuals for year 17. I do only include one deduct in that building. I don't suggest we probably make a lot of changes until we see what the next year or two brings for costs. I do show a deduct under 4201 professional services. Original request was $3,027. I suggested a deduct of $1,027. Again, this is my best estimate of what these costs will be.
So move.
Wait, Kenny, what are we doing out there for snow removal? I know that came up to me from,
That is in this cost.
it is in this cost?
Yeah, it's under professional services.
Okay, so are we having outside contractor do it?
We are, yes.
I will second.
So that was motion by Taylor and second by DeWitt. I was going to ask on this, Is there any capital expenditures coming up on this too? You know, for paving or for anything else, or are we just kind of? Because I don't want any like mid-budget
I
year.
did put parking lot in the 2000,
How much? What a pay? Right now they got,
60,000 I put in for the
Sarah Rose
2000.
brought in crushed rock or something, put out.
Concrete.
We brought in crushed concrete about, I just signed the bills on about $1,900 worth. That does not build the full parking lot they asked. We still have to extend that lot about 50 feet back toward the old Prairie Hills building, and then double, well, not quite double the width anymore. I think we need to add another 25 feet to the width to get to where we want to be with the crushed concrete. The sheriff's department asked us to get it so they could park one row of cars and have enough room to maneuver, which is what we did at this point. We found a more favorable source of material, so we were able to get that. We're also building a sidewalk into that needs to work with some Menards pavers, little 12 by 12 paver blocks.
And that's also part of that 2019 CIP I've got in, is sidewalks.
We will have to bill that to somebody at some point.
So no more equipment, floor scrubbers, anything like that that,
We have some equipment, but we didn't identify any for Prairie Hills, no.
okay. All right. And it wasn't brought up in any meetings, so we shouldn't get any surprises about June or August. All right, so it was motioned by Taylor and second by DeWitt. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any-
Minus the 1,027, is that?
Yeah, minus 1,027 is shown on the sheet. So moving on to District Health Building, which in the book is page 18.
The 2020 request total for Siouxland District Health was $5,000. I'm showing a suggested deduction of $1,500 for a total request of $3,500. The reduction I'm requesting is under 4455 HVAC systems. One thing to note about Siouxland District Health is that via the 28E agreement, Siouxland District Health pays bills that are under $2,000, and the county pays bills over $2,000. So that's why I suggested a minimum of $3,500.
I'd move it with that reduction.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Ung to receive. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, and that was minus the 1,500. Moving on to Building Services Facility, the state-of-the-art.
You've seen it. The 2020 requested total was $80,539. The suggested deduction is $16,950 for a total of $77,039. The first deduction is under 4410 buildings. Original request was $3,000. Deduction request is $1,500. Next item, 4420, equipment maintenance, $500. Deduction, $2,000. Line item 6105, buildings. Original request was $1,000. Suggested deduct is $500. Line item 6350, motor vehicle and equipment. Original request was $30,000. The suggested deduct is $11,950. Line item 6360, office equipment and furniture. Original request was $2,000. Suggested deduction is $1,000.
Kenny, can you look at 2940 for a moment, please?
Sorry, which one, Jeremy?
2940. You have wearing, safety, apparel. You haven't spent any this year. Last year, it looks like you spent $955, and then in 17, $6,500 some odd dollars.
Yes. We didn't buy uniforms in 2018 for the staff. I'm looking at buying some safety items. PPE is personal protective equipment. That's anything we would need to protect our staff. In other words, at the very end of that, you'll see where it says arc flash kit. That is basically a suit that a technician would put on before he opens up an electrical panel or before he takes the cover off an electrical panel.
You have $6,800 some odd dollars that you're planning to spend on that?
Yes,
Okay. Fair enough.
It's expensive stuff.
it is.
I'd move to receive minus $16,950.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Young. Any other discussion on the building service facility? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, moving on to the County Service Facility Tri-View Building on page 23 in our books.
At the Tri-View Building, the 2020 request total was $7,495. The suggested deduction is $2,000 for a total of $5,495. Typically, this building in the past, when I say we, I mean building services, has been kind of eating costs on. So we've broken this out to reflect things like custodial supplies, which we are using there. That's something that's never shown up before. Professional services. Those are fire extinguisher inspections, things like if we can't get a drain clean, we have to bring a roto-rooter in. Removing snow from the parking lot. Those are all items that we have been expending in other areas, in other budgets in the past. And this brings it to where it belongs.
We never passed any of those costs on to the region either. We just always maintained it, right?
The Tri-View?
Yeah.
Yes, because we own it. That is property of Woodbury County, which they've all agreed to.
And we have Veteran Affairs there too.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's out there also.
And so the only deduct I had shown on that is 6105 under buildings, and that's a $2,000 deduct.
I'd move to receive with that amount, $2,000 deducted.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Young. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to secondary roads. Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you, and thank the board for jumping across line items the way we did. I think it made it simpler.
I like it this way, Kenny. Good job.
Yeah, Dennis, could you put it in this format for all the other
Yes.
budgets, please?
For all their budgets,
Yeah.
we could.
I was wondering, for the next time, Dennis, when you show that, is there a way to, if the board's okay with taking not only all these reductions, but also the WCICC and STARCOM, our percentage, noting it as such? I know that is that all right with everybody else, or do you want to leave it as it is right now?
I don't know what you're asking exactly.
So when on all these different improvement requests, you know, some of them we said no, and some of them said, well, we'll leave it in and wait and see. I'd like to see at least the ones that we've taken up so far, if we can see what the reductions are. I don't know what everyone else thinks about that.
Well, we'll see it on the update next week.
But on some of them, like emergency services, we said, okay, we'll keep it in and come back to it later. And then on others, we said, we'll take it out. So I'm just wondering, those that we've taken up so far,
Right now, you've only taken out conservation, you left emergency services in, and the other one will be next week with the sheriff. Then you come to these multi-county.
how about WCICC? What did we,
I think that comes back in rewrap, or.
Yeah, wrap up. Unless you want to just pull it out right now, I just take it out of there. I thought it was more than that. I thought it was like 100 and, oh, I guess it was just our share.
Our share was, oh, well, we've, I would say on the ones where we said leave it in,
Yeah.
we'll readdress it, show it as being there. I mean, we can still take it out if we do that, but.
Yeah, I got them on.
can you differentiate the ones that are still on your thing or that are still potentials? Yeah, that still potentially we might come,
Two right now. Three. There's emergency services, comm center, and WIC.
okay.
Took conservation out. And next week, we got the sheriff's request. Then that's it for improvements.
Okay.
And I can give you dollar amounts for each one of those two.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Let's see how much more.
The ones we've taken out, the ones still left to take out. Okay.
Out of here where Mark's taking all our money.
As usual, we come to you with the minimum levy calculation. By state code, the secondary road department is required to provide local effort equal to 75% of the maximum allowable levies for the general basic and the rural basic accounts. So each year, Dennis and I go through and we take a look at what the new rural valuation is and the new city valuation is. We set we take the rural valuation times $3.03. We take the city valuation times 16 7/8 cents. I shouldn't say city, but I should say general basic because it also includes the county. We take that by 16 7/8 cents and determine what that maximum is. From there, I multiply it times 75% to determine that minimum local effort. We subtract the local option sales tax that's available to the road department, which is roughly 80% of what your receipts are. And then that's what we need to levy and get spread out over taxes. This year we saw over $200 million in growth for the general levy. Rural was around 100 million. When you combine those two and then get to that 75%, it comes out to about $350,000 increase to hit that minimum. Anytime you're levying at the minimum, if there's any growth at all, you're guaranteeing yourself a property tax increase the next year. There's just no way around it. We've been working with looking at different financial schemes to derive more money for gravel. And one of the spreadsheets I shared with Supervisor Taylor showed how as CF valuation comes online and as the other growth
The money's
occurs,
just gonna come.
even at 1%, that levy is going to go up each year. And one of the reasons that the levy goes up fast in the rural is because we're not taking anything from the countywide. So all the countywide gets to hit that minimum gets absorbed by the rural taxpayers. That's neither good nor bad. It's just a fact of the way that we budget and derive that revenue. I think the $1,450,000 I requested this year compared to the $1,100,000 from last year puts me at 76.19% according to my calculations. I always bump that 75 just a little in case we have a shortfall in receipts. It just gives a little bit of cushion if we do end up coming up a little bit short.
Mark, can you talk about the gravel for this? And I know we haven't done anything as far as a seismic dedication, but I know you do have a little bit with that minimum valuation coming online as far as some increased funds, not enough to probably make a dent and even getting back to where we once were. But right now, what would you say versus last year.
This year to next year, or fiscal
Right,
2019 to fiscal 2020, I'm treading water. I'm looking at the same quantity,
But
just anticipating.
you're sort of absorbing the cost increase.
Exactly.
You're dedicating more, but it's still the same.
I'm dedicating more money, but it
Right.
isn't going to show up as
Yep.
far as tonnage on the road, I'm afraid.
Okay.
But yeah, we're slipping as much as we can there. Something else to look at is our total departmental pay this year. Our payroll is up, I want to say, around 170,000, just from the 2.75% raises that union staff, and then anticipating that our other staff will get similar. One thing I did do this year is I did allocate a little bit more to new equipment, but we have a aging excavator. We've sunk a lot of money into it here over the last couple of years, and it's facing a couple of other repairs as well. So I'm trying to keep 2 motor graders in the budget and get that excavator replaced next year. Last year we only replaced 1 motor grader, and that one had been delayed in replacement about 2 years. We ended up with the transmission going out before trade-in time and losing almost $40,000 on the value of that machine. So when we only trade 1 motor grader per year, we take that risk of them having a major component defect like we did experience this year. There's just, we put roughly 1,000 hours a year on it. We're trading on average, every 12 years. As they get into that 12 to 14,000 range, the risk of an engine overhaul or transmission overhaul, which are major component repairs, becomes less of a possibility and more of a certainty. So I'm really trying to keep us under that 12 to $14,000 age bracket. It's one of the reasons if you do go through our budget in detail, you can see that our budget is up this year on new equipment replacements. Again, that's to keep those 2 motor graders in, along with getting rid of that excavator.
Kenny offered nearly $100,000 in cuts.
What I did was I took that minimum and I backed the whole budget in.
Yeah.
And we work within the amount of money that the board has historically put into our budget. Our road use tax funds are down about $300,000 since fiscal year 2016. I mean, and this is something that's going on statewide. DOT is seeing the same reduction. Vehicles are getting more fuel efficient. Less fuel is being purchased, even though more vehicle miles of travel are occurring. I think we're going to see that, steady reduction. Again, it's down about $300,000, what our projected income from road use tax fund is compared to our peak. It's a very, very tight budget year. The majority of our income, as you all know, comes from outside the county. We get the $2 million from local option sales tax. We're asking $1.45 million from property taxes. We bring in roughly $7 million from outside to fund the department.
In that formula for that statewide minimum or minimum levy calculation, that gets us how much revenue from outside sources?
$5,079,768 is the road use tax. So
okay,
if, for instance, we came $100,000 short, they would take $100,000 off our road use tax. So we'd only receive $4,979,000.
And the board got into that situation prior to 4 or 5 years back, correct?
It was before I got here. It was during the property tax freeze in the late 90s. And they had tried to spend down a large balance, so they lowered the levy for that 1 year. And lo and behold, after they certified their budget, the state came along and froze property taxes. And, I don't think anybody saw that coming.
No, and that cost us $400,000 on our side, $400,000 in additional revenue. We had to end up.
For 3 years.
Yep, 800,000 a year, so that did hurt. Trying to be efficient, and the legislature changed it all. And we had to go to the state appeal board to get back to our level of minimum funding to get back up. So it's pretty costly if you don't go the minimum.
Well, and you never know what the State House is going to do in any given. I haven't heard any property tax freeze rumblings, but sometimes they like to use us as their target when it comes to trying to save money.
I would move to receive.
I'll second it. So motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Any other questions on secondary roads? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to the special 5-year bridge project, secondary roads.
There is no levy amount tagged for this, but we're estimating that we're going to have about a little over $1 million left in that balance that will be applied toward the paving on County Road D50 south of Anthem. This year we're letting the grading. We have about 50% of the right-of-way under contract now. Ben is working to get the last of those done. Based on contract and current expenditures, we have about just over $2 million left in that fund. Depending on the actual cost of the grading project, which depending on how much they charge us per cubic yard could go anywhere between 1.5 and 2.3 million dollars. We're going to become pretty close to eating up the last of the fund and getting the grading done. We'll have to look at funding the paving from just our regular secondary road funds. It may be possible for us to make a request for some federal aid funding for that. It is a federal aid eligible route, but we won't know that until we see what those grading costs are and we see how much money we've got left. Grading, or waiting for federal aid would also push us out to 2024 on paving, which I think is longer than we want to go.
I'd move to receive.
Second. Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to roadside management, page 54.
No changes here other than payroll, I believe. We are, initially we requested that the cost of a new sprayer be plugged into the equipment maintenance fund, but I believe Dennis moved that to capital projects.
Capital projects. This is improvement to their operation. It's over 5,000, lasts longer than 5 years.
We've been patching the current one together as the weed commissioner reported to you during his annual report back in December. And he is being pressed with additional state requirements for accounting for quantity and location for everything he sprays into the future. While the GPS isn't mandated today, the Department of Agriculture is very much looking at that requirement. And in a lot of ways, it's just like the automatic vehicle location that we have on our motor graders and trucks. More often than not, knowing where those vehicles are at what time and being able to prescribe a location, even if you do have a problem where we throw a rock at somebody and break a windshield, at least we know we were there and that we were responsible for it. You feel better paying the bill than if you aren't sure you were there and the person just is picking on us because we have a fleet of big yellow trucks. So I think we'll find similar help coming as the GPS comes online for our sprayer as well. It'll be much easier for him to explain to folks who are receiving drift from their neighboring farm field rather than their neighboring road that causes damage to the path in the future.
I move to receive.
Second. Motion by DeWitt, second by Raddick. All those, or any other questions, I guess, on this? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. And it looks like,
Mark, on a side note, did you get my text? I think it was yesterday on 220th.
Yes, we
Okay.
observed on the edges. I haven't been out there today, or I'll try and get out there yet this week to check it. We've had some problems out there on the edges where the garbage trucks are running right along the mailboxes, and we've had some breakup out there. Centerline had been holding up, so I don't know if that's where they were.
And I didn't go out there. I just received a phone call from one of the residents out there, and I told him I'd pass it on, so.
During harvest, when everything was wet, we had some extremely heavy loads running up and down that road out there.
Great.
Yeah, as much money as we invested in that seal coat, and to see it getting torn up like this. I wish we could get the garbage trucks to run more in the middle, but, you know, again, they want to be close to where they can use that manual pickup of those bins. And garbage trucks are the heaviest rear axle load allowed by state code. So when they get out there and they're already partially loaded, they're on the weakest part of the road with the heaviest axle load in the state.
Okay.
But we'll look at what repairs might be necessary when spring comes. We'll definitely be wanting to put an embargo on that road in the spring.
those trash customers want a right to refuse services, right? Sorry. With that bad joke, I think we have a break until about 4:30 unless there's any other concerns. All right, see you back here.